Nickel Plate Road 587 is a 282 USRA Light Mikado steam locomotive, originally built all the way back in September of 1918 by Baldwin for the Lake Erie and Western Railroad. Her number back then was 5541, and the USRA Light Mikados were known as being very good steam locomotives. They were incredibly modern designs, and most of them lasted well until the end of steam entirely. A total of 614 original USRA Mikados were built, but there were also 641 copies of them made because they were that good. These were an extremely prevalent type of steam engine. And when talking specifically about 587, again originally 5541, with her tender she weighed approximately 637,000 pounds, or 289 tons, and could deliver a tractive effort of 54,720 pounds of force, 243.4 kilonewtons. Reliable, efficient, they were exceptional pieces of work, especially for their time. Though originally built for Lake Erie and Western, as 5541, she only lasted like that for about 4 years until the railway was bought by the Nickel Plate Road. In 1922, they would consolidate and standardize their locomotive numbering system, and in 1924, 5541 was given the number she's mostly known for, 587. But outside of that, she remained pretty much unchanged. Like I said, these were really good locomotives. About the only modification that was ever made to her happened in late 1943, when she was given castings from Limbo Locomotive Works instead of her originals. But besides that, not much else had to be changed about her. She was a perfectly fine locomotive. The Mikados were known for being powerful and flexible. They weren't so big that they couldn't operate on smaller lines, but not so small that they couldn't handle longer trains. So 587 wound up doing pretty much whatever Nickel Plate really needed her to do. But she mostly served on the route from Indianapolis to Michigan City, and she pulled her final revenue train in March of 1955, when she was finally retired from service. 587 would wind up being one of the fortunate ones to be saved for preservation. On September 9th, 1955, Nickel Plate decided to donate her to the city of Indianapolis to be put on display in Broad Ripple Park. Yep, she would become a park engine. Though prior to that, her original tender was actually swapped with another Mikado, number 639, because 639's tender needed to be repaired, and 587's was in really good shape. Other than that though, 587 wound up in the park without incident, and remained there for nearly 30 years, until October of 1983. That year, the city of Indianapolis was looking into building a new public library in the park, but the problem was the only available location for them to do that was where 587 happened to be sitting, so you can kind of see what the issue was. Now naturally this sounds like it's putting 587 at risk, but no one involved seemed to be really interested in necessarily cutting her to pieces. At the same time, a group of people, calling themselves the Friends of 587, wound up doing a feasibility study to figure out whether or not she could actually be restored to operation, and found that she was in remarkably good shape. The Indianapolis Parks Department wound up leasing 587 to the Indiana Transportation Museum, or ITM, and that's when real restoration work began, and she would wind up making her first successful test run on August 29th, 1988. It had taken a lot of time and money to get her back up to steam. Nearly $250,000 were donated in money and materials to make it happen, but it had happened. 587 was put into excursion service, and did the first of those runs on September 17th, 1988, pulling a train from Indianapolis to Logansport, Indiana. ITM would operate 587 as their main attraction, and she was used primarily to pull their fair train from Fishers, Indiana, to the Indiana State Fair in Indianapolis, as well as other special events. In 1989, she actually pulled a doubleheader with Norfolk and Western 611, They worked together to pull the annual Independence Limited from Rocky River, Ohio to Roanoke, Virginia, over a 4-day period from the 17th of June to the 20th. 587 was added at Bellevue, Ohio, and on July 16, 1989, 587 joined 611 again, as well as Norfolk and Western 1218 for a triple header from Roanoke to Lynchburg, Virginia for the National Railway Historical Society Convention that was held in Asheville, North Carolina. 587 would actually lead 2 excursions for the convention, one of them with 1218 again, and in October of 1988, 89, and 1993, 587 also made runs down to Bloomington, Indiana, along with a side trip over the Tulip Viaduct. In 93, 587 also led a doubleheader with fellow Nickel Plate Road locomotive 765 on an excursion from Fort Wayne to Chicago, Illinois, as part of that year's NRHS convention. That actually marked the first time 587 had visited Chicago since Restoration. Then in 1997, the 587, along with a tool car, deadheaded to the Monticello Railway Museum to receive necessary repairs. And after that work was done, she made a few runs on the MRM to benefit the restoration of Southern Railway 401. However, by November 11th, 2002, 587's Federal Railroad Administration mandated rebuild was coming due, so she made her final runs at the ITM, which included an all-day excursion over the museum's entire 38-mile line from Tipton to Indianapolis. And in early 2003, her operating permit finally expired. And under FRA rules, it meant that she had to have all her boiler tubes and flues replaced, which is what we call in the business very expensive. But ITM did want to put her back into service, it just, it hasn't happened for a variety of reasons. Technically speaking, even as I speak, she's still in the middle of this second overhaul, but it's always been dependent on funding and available volunteer efforts. Her tubes, flues, dry pipe, superheater, and a lot of other pieces of her are still removed. And the dry pipe in particular was worn too thin to support further operations, so it needed a whole replacement, but that was fabricated and just needs to be installed. Her air pump was also removed and rebuilt, and is also in storage awaiting reinstallation. Several sections of her firebox have also been cut away and replaced, as well as a section of the rear tube sheet that was worn too thin and was fabricated and molded into place. In fact, a lot of other parts are either almost finished or already finished being replaced or repaired. So what's the deal here? Well, ITM received full ownership of 587 from the Indianapolis Parks Department in 2008, but by June 28, 2018, a court order actually required the ITM to vacate their former location, which was awkward since that's where 587 was. Fortunately, the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation made a deal with them to relocate 587 before the deadline, and this resulted in her being stored in Ravenna, Kentucky, alongside Chesapeake and Ohio 2716, who we just talked about actually. And that was only to be until ITM could raise enough funds to finish the restoration, and they wanted to bring her back to Indiana once that was done. However, her restoration still isn't done. In fact, she's still in Kentucky, and ITM doesn't even own her anymore. Oh yes, this is where things get, I don't want to be cynical here, but there's so much mystery that I just have trust issues with this type of thing. On March 5th, 2021, ownership was transferred from ITM to a private individual who, to date, has chosen to remain anonymous. This person is apparently working with KSHCO regarding the future of 587, and she will remain in Ravenna until a solid plan can be worked up. It does sound like they want to restore her, but as of right now, there's no information regarding that. And the reason why I have some trust issues surrounding this is that, private individuals owning locomotives can go really well, but they could also be named Jensen. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, what's happening? Who are you? Why are you remaining anonymous? How am I supposed to give people accurate information if I don't even know who you are? Face me, coward! And the fate of 587 does kind of hang in the balance here. For a long time, people were waiting for her to come back into service. It still hasn't happened. A lot of what she needed is kind of done, and yet she's still just sitting there. I understand that there's plenty of money issues to work up here, but also, who is this person? Who owns her now? I want to know these things. And unfortunately, as of the making of this video, no one outside of those directly involved seems to know. Another alarming concern is that originally 587 was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. That was back in 1984. However, she was delisted on November 15th, 2021. What's going on with the Mikado, guys? Again, there's nothing concrete for me to suggest outwardly that there's anything malicious going on, but there's some red flags here. There's some alarm bells that are going off, and I'm just like, I don't want to see another excursion star get scrapped, okay? I don't want that to happen. Hopefully that's not what's happening. Most evidence seems to suggest that's not the case. I just have some serious trust issues. But the verdict's still out regarding exactly what's going on here. But hopefully someday, we can all see 587 run on the rails again. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Anzac A1 Arthur Roy, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Brian, Jack Carson's Row of Videos, Lord Off 444, Mark Holding, Murder Jones Doll, 8person723, DM Tribal Typhoon, Royal Hudson 2860, Iser 41405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matthew Wolf, Mr. Sleepy Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, Edis Productions 8104, Hannah Bird, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Ohio Trucker 1, Joshua Long, Andrew Bowen, Dr. Racer 78, Josh Johnson, Hayden DeGrow, Travis Dolinsky, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Oklahoma Hot Rail, and Liam Wright. Till next time, this is Darkness, and a bit well of fun. Farewell.